Doyle.
Mr. Speaker, could I inquire how much time remains?
The gentleman has 5 1/4 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
From Texas, 2 minutes.
I just remind my friends you can say it as many times as you want, but the fact of the matter is that under current law, the FTC has no authority to regulate the FCC, and the FCC commissioner has said that you cannot do this without a rule in Section 222. I would now like to yield the magic minute to our House Democratic leader, Ms. Pelosi.
Gentlelady is recognized.
Speaker, I thank the gentleman for yielding, and I thank him on behalf of my 5 children and my 9 grandchildren and everyone I know, as a matter of fact, for being a champion for privacy for the American people. Thank you, Mr. Doyle, for your leadership. Thank you, Mr. Pallone, for yours, and Congresswoman Eshoo has been a champion on this issue as well. Can we move this so I can see? Okay. Thank you. Mr. Speaker, Americans turn to the internet for so many things these days: buying books, filing taxes, learning about why they are feeling sick. The website, the Republicans want this information to be sold without your permission. The websites you visit, the apps you use, your search history, the content of your emails, your health and financial data. Overwhelmingly, the American people do not agree with the Republicans that this information should be sold, and it certainly should not be sold without your permission. Your broadband provider knows deeply, our broadband providers know deeply personal information about us and our families. Where we are, what we want, what we're looking for, what information we want to know, every site we visit, and more. They can even track us. Our broadband providers can even track us when we're surfing in a private browsing mode. Americans' private browser history should not be up for sale. Yet Republicans are bringing SJ Resolution 34 to the floor to allow internet service providers, excuse me, Mr. Speaker, I had to get this, to profit. This is about profit from America's most intimate personal information without our knowledge or our consent. Republicans' use of the Congressional Review Act will do permanent damage to the FCC's ability to keep America's personal information safe. As the FCC Commissioner Clyburn and FTC Commissioner McSweeney warned, this legislation will frustrate the FCC, the Federal Communications Commission's future efforts to protect the privacy of voice and broadband customers. It's important for our constituents to know that if the Republicans had a problem with this particular policy, they might tweak it and say, we don't like it this way or that, in regular legislation, so that we could have a debate on it. It could go back to the Federal Communications Commission. They could revise it and send it back if it were a legitimate presentation of concerns. But it's not about a legitimate presentation of concerns. It's about increasing profits at the expense of the privacy of the American people. So, as I say, the Republicans' use of the Congressional Review Act does permanent damage and also damages the FCC's ability to keep America's personal information safe. With this measure, Republicans would destroy Americans' right to privacy on the internet, we made that clear, and forbid any effort to keep your personal information safe. Republicans are bending over backwards. Think of it. Think of the context of all of this. Since Gerald Ford was president, every candidate for president, every nominee of the major party, every candidate for president of the United States, Democratic and Republican, has released their income tax returns out of respect for the American people. Out of respect for the American people. week in and week out, in fact, sometimes day in and day out in committee as well as on the floor, the Republicans have kept their president's income tax returns private, when the public has a right to know that the public has always known that about every president since Gerald Ford, in fact, since Richard Nixon, although in his case it wasn't voluntary. So while they're hiding President Trump's tax returns, some discrete piece of information that the public has a right to know, they are selling your most personal and sensitive information, again, your browsing history, your children's location, everything, to anyone with the money to buy it. Incognito tabs or private browsing modes will not protect you from the internet service providers watching and selling. As Mr. Capuano pointed out, watching and selling. Republicans have picked the week after Russian spies were caught hacking into 500 million American email accounts to open the floodgates, overturning the requirement that internet service providers keep their sensitive data secured from cyber criminals. The American people deserve to be able to insist that intimate details and information about their browser history be kept private and secure. So how's this? We have this magnificent technology that science has made available to people to facilitate commerce, to learn about different subjects, to privately pursue in a way that they may not even want their families to know what symptoms they have and what illness that might tell them about. Most Americans have no or limited choices for broadband providers and no recourse against these invasions of their privacy. Because with this measure, Republicans turn their back on the overwhelming number of Americans who want more control over their internet privacy. Americans can choose who represent them in Congress. Americans are paying close attention. They want to know who is taking a stand with them in opposing efforts to sell their private information to the American people. This is staggering. This is almost a surrender. If the Republicans are allowed to do this, we have surrendered all thoughts of privacy for the American people. Privacy is a value that the American people treasure. It's about their dignity. It's about their dignity. We cannot allow the Republicans to sell the dignity of the American people. I hope that everyone will vote no on this most unfortunate assault on the dignity of the American people. And yield back the balance.
Gentleman from Pennsylvania. Mr. Doyle,
Mr. Speaker, our time has all expired.
your time
I
has...
thank the Speaker. I ask my colleagues to please vote against this horrible bill, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Mr. Flores.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We've heard a lot of interesting claims today in the discussion about this fairly simple resolution to roll back overreaching regulations from the FCC that were passed late in the Obama administration's time. I would remind everybody, Mr. Speaker, that this CRA has nothing to do with the president's tax return. It has nothing to do with Russian hacking. And there have been some gross mischaracterizations of what this resolution does. Why do we need this resolution? 3 reasons, as Chairwoman Blackburn opened up at the beginning. First of all, the FCC swiped jurisdiction from the FTC. Secondly, 2 cops on the beat create confusion among consumers and among the ISP providers. And number 3, the FTC already has jurisdiction over this space. Let me say this. Let me close with this. This resolution only rescinds the FCC's rule, but it still provides the FCC the opportunity to provide more oversight, more in line with the Federal Trade Commission, which has successfully been regulating online privacy for nearly 2 decades. This bill does not lessen or impede the privacy and data security standards that we already have established. We are simply restoring a more stable regulatory playing field to ensure that consistent, uniform privacy standards are maintained to protect consumers and future innovation. Once Congress rejects these rules, the FCC can turn back to cooperating with the FTC to ensure both that consumer privacy across all aspects of the Internet is protected through vigorous enforcement and also that innovation is allowed to flourish. I urge all my colleagues to support this common sense resolution, and I reserve the balance of my time. All right, yield back.
Gentleman yields back his time. All time for debate has expired. Pursuant to the rule, the previous question is ordered on the joint resolution. The question is on third reading of the joint resolution. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. Third reading.
Joint resolution providing for congressional disapproval under Chapter 8 of Title V United States Code of the rule submitted by the Federal Communications Commission relating to protecting the privacy of customers of broadband and other telecommunication services.
Question is on passage of the joint resolution. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it.
Mr.
Gentleman
Speaker,
from Pennsylvania.
I ask for the yeas and nays, a recorded vote.
Yeas and nays are requested. Those in favor of a vote by the yeas and nays will rise. A sufficient number having risen, the yeas and nays are ordered. Pursuant to Clause 8 of Rule 20, further proceedings on this question will be postponed.